What is tension? In an artistic sense, tension is the balance maintained in an artistic work between opposing forces or elements. In other words, it's how two or more groups stand against each other while also relying on each other to force a cohesiveness into the art piece, perpetuating each other over and over. Probably the most important example of this that almost everyone knows about is the concept of yin and yang. Even as one might grow and expand, the other must retract in response, and then eventually ebb and flow in the opposite direction. But both cannot happen at the same time, as it is only together that the two create the whole picture. They cannot both expand simultaneously, as that would take them above the total of the unspoken whole. Nor can they both retract, creating an image that is less than that same whole. That isn't to say that they don't try, just that it is impossible for them to both be in a state of ebb or flow. And that is where the tension begins, that conflict of supremacy within harmony itself. That very sentence is just one such example of natural tension. You wouldn't normally think that conflict can exist within harmony, but it has to. The concept of harmony cannot exist if conflict has never been experienced. It would simply be. And by just about this point, you're probably saying to yourself, I didn't come here for a philosophy lecture. This is supposed to be about weeb shit. And to that I say, no you. Which doesn't make much sense as a response, but it's the one you got. But perhaps you're right. Solo leveling, at least on the surface, doesn't do much to distinguish itself from many other webtoons in the action and adventure tags. Many of them feature dungeon crawling, regression, awakening, and other similar features. And yet, despite that, it's probably the one that I've enjoyed the most. When it was released regularly, I would wait every week for the new chapter to drop. I even used to joke that it's the perfect generic action series that I can just turn my brain off and enjoy. Which led me to the question, what is it about solo leveling that drew me in so much? And you probably saw the answer a mile away with all the build-up, but it's the tension. That isn't to say that I don't think other similar series don't have tension, because that would be a lie, and the only thing I hate more than a lie is skim milk. It isn't even to say that I think other series are lacking tension, just that solo leveling is a masterclass in controlling the natural ebb and flow of the tension. It's the very thing that gives off the natural magnetism to make you want to keep reading. At its core, solo leveling is about facing down seemingly insurmountable adversity, to continually be thrown into the fray of conflict and struggle, and then that eventual gratification of picking oneself up enough times that the enemy falls for the final time. In fact, it's because of another similar series of games that I even thought about the connection between the two and the shared message. Dark Souls, and by extension the rest of the Soulsborne games, aren't about failing. They're about getting back up and taking another stab at it, to grade against adversity so many times that little bits of your own failings will hopefully be shredded on the millstone that is the game, that you come out leaner and stronger, more capable of going on and defeating the next area in a cyclical cycle. Its own natural ebb and flow, a tale of loss and victory. Just as you can feel the conflict within the game, it becomes almost palpable within solo leveling. That desperate struggle of pushing back and forth with the enemy until one reigns supreme. And then it's on to the next challenge. Not forgotten, no, because that would go against the very nature of conflict, of growth. And there are two main ways this is shown through experience. Whether you think of the more literal in-game experience you earn for killing an enemy that is then sunk into strengthening your character in a very demonstrable manner, or through the experience you as the actual player have gained, the lessons you learned from being knocked down, how to better dodge, the best times to go all in, and when to step back. And the more you do it, the easier the flow of the conflict is to control. And these same things are central to Song Jin-woo, the main protagonist of the story. In a way though, this inner conflict and sense of growth goes even deeper, because he isn't experiencing it through a medium like we the reader are, or as we do in a Soulsborne game. No, every experience is core to himself. The internal conflict he faces over his own perceived inadequacy to both provide for his family and in his role as a hunter. Which leads to other interesting ideas, like how much Song Jin-woo is willing to lose of who he was to become something new. Something capable of facing all the adversity, overcoming the tension, the struggles both within and outside of himself. Or to ultimately succumb. Tension takes shape in many ways within solo leveling. It is the core of its identity. It ultimately sacrifices everything considered to be extraneous to focus down into the very core of itself. There is very little that is ostentatious. Every core trope is broken down to their bare bones to fully hone into tension and how it can be perpetuated onto both the reader and within the character himself. Through shedding any attempts at creating a great story, it instead allows for the feelings of tension to be amplified. The picture that by saying so little, ends up saying so much more than it could have otherwise. So much so, that the idea of tension becomes the story itself.